Hello everyone, this is Carol. I'm currently an NYP math teacher in an IB/American school in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. As 2022 marks my 7th year of international K-12 school teaching, I have launched a self-paced book review project. This project includes reading 24 books in a year, which are related to math education, music, which is truly my definition, and neuroscience, along with sharing my insights in the format of a blog entry or a short slide presentation like this. I am very excited about learning through this process and hearing back from you. In this presentation, I'm going to review Code Green on Dyscalculia, a guide for educators, parents, counselors, and other professionals. This book was written by Helmi Faber, who is a Dutch-trained developmental psychologist. Her expertise is dyscalculia, which is a slowly growing subfield in the realm of neurodiversity. Faber is currently based in Singapore as a practitioner of developmental psychologist and a researcher on dyscalculia. Code Green on Dyscalculia was published in October 2021. It is fairly a new book, and it has a list of recent studies as its references. Here is my presentation outline. I want to first share what motivated me to read this book. I will then discuss some definitions and examples coming from this book. The third part is public awareness, which I think Faber contributes a lot in terms of briefing existing current research projects and national regulations on a global scale. The fourth part is case studies. The excerpt here gives classroom teachers and parents some hints about when to seek professional support. This presentation wraps up with some future directions for various stakeholders in supporting young people with dyscalculia. Okay, let's get started. What motivated me to read this book was straightforward. I'm working on building an inclusive math classroom for my students. I define such a classroom as a safe learning environment for students with diverse learning needs, from different cultural backgrounds and towards unimaginable futures. Here's a little bit about myself. I grew up in Taiwan, which is relatively unique cultural. I went to a Catholic girls' high school and I was a music major for 6 years. Most of my classmates back then came from middle-class families. So, being educated in a more or less exclusive system, it was challenging to me to consider all students' unique learning patterns and to imagine how cultural differences might lead to different learning patterns at first. On top of that, COVID has changed the connection between education and future job markets dramatically. Educators around the world have been prompted to reform how and why we teach to prepare our students for an uncertain future. However, I see myself as an adventurer when it comes to intellectual experiences. I challenge myself to accommodate a diverse student body and teach math creatively. One challenge I took in the second half of 2021 was to utilize students' ILPs. So here you can see ILP stands for Individual Learning Plans. So I utilized the document to support students' transition from PYP to NYP. And as I found, about 5 of my 95 students have a record of dyscalculia, and they struggled quite a bit in elementary school. As they stepped into the first year of NYP/secondary school, I wanted to guide them to build up healthy learning habits. And of course, the bigger picture for me is to understand math education and special education from a global perspective. I am very curious to investigate similarities and differences in terms of policies and practices across cultures. These images here give you an idea of what's being covered in the book. There are 4 chapters. The first one is on a general introduction and some case studies. The second is on various diagnoses in different countries. The third is related to educational support through intervention. The fourth is how we as readers can dig further into reading other published books or research projects. I should say first though, the language of this book is a little bit dry and technical, but I think Faber did well in presenting Dyscalculia with proper examples and solid literature reviews. Faber discussed most of these definitions of dyscalculia in the first chapter. For example, we know very early on that dyscalculia was first introduced to the public in 1919, which indicates that this is a field that has been researched for over 100 years. It is noteworthy that each individual may have different cognitive gifts or challenges such as high IQ or some other learning needs like ADHD, autism, and so on and so forth. Also, Faber distinguished math difficulties from dyscalculia. While math difficulties or math anxiety can be temporary, dyscalculia is lifelong. While math difficulties can be caused by negative attitude toward math surrounding the child, the causes to dyscalculia remain unknown to us right now. It is also interesting that while a sense of mathematics starts to be built around age 3 or 4, counting numbers is a good example. Dyscalculia cannot be diagnosed until age 8. The diagnosis happens later than the one for dyslexia. While dyscalculia cannot be prevented, it can be intervened, and intervention is a highlight in her 3rd chapter of the book. One important step in intervention is to shift from calling disorders and disabilities to using neurodiversity in academic and public discussions. Well, I haven't delved much into the name changing, but I agree that using neurodiversity helps educators to dig further into neuroscience and learning as a way to support, not to label, these students with needs. Here's a quote from this book. Faber says, "Dyscalculia may involve a deficit in one or more of the following domains: number sense, memorization of arithmetic facts, accurate or fluent calculation, and accurate math reasoning." And you can actually find more features of the domains in the book. And here is the image, and I think it captures precisely how individuals with dyscalculia process numbers and logical thinking. You can see a mess here. Dyscalculia, in this sense, is not only challenges in schooling, but also about how one deals with daily activities, such as money, time management, estimating distances, and so on and so forth. Now I want to invite you to pause the video and think through these characteristics of dyscalculia listed in the book. Do some of them resonate with your teaching? Well, for me, I highlighted counting with fingers and being slow in mental math because these two can be tricky. Recently, I came across a TED Talk. Jo Boaler, she's the presenter. She is a Stanford-based math educator, writer, and researcher. She would argue differently about these two. In the TED Talk, she mentioned that counting with fingers is actually beneficial to children in terms of visualizing abstract mathematical concepts, and it should be encouraged in school. On top of that, mental math, which is a highlight in quite a few Asian national math curricula, such as Singapore, Taiwan, China, Hong Kong, and so on and so forth. But it does not receive similar attention in some Western countries, as far as I am aware of. So these two tricky features, I would argue, show that diagnosing dyscalculia can be challenging when some initial symptoms are related to other underlying learning issues, such as lack of adult support or belated cognitive development. As a cross-cultural and trilingual reader myself, I enjoyed reading this section on public awareness in different countries. The Netherlands, as an example, is one of the few countries which officially recognize dyscalculia and thus develop much rigorous research upon it. So here's an example. The Road to Mathematics is one leading project. In the UK, on the other hand, preliminary screening exists to ease financial burdens for families, since a series of tests and consultations with specialists can be time and energy consuming. And this is an example, the Dyscalculia screener. Around 20 countries are mentioned in the book for active research on dyscalculia. So here's the list. Have you noticed any geographical emphasis as I did? Well, I wonder what happens in the rest of the world. And here's an interesting fact. March 3rd, which is also my birthday, is now the World Dyscalculia Day. I am really hoping to see this field growing as time progresses. Another interesting fact. Faber describes the internationally outstanding math curriculum and a leading organization on dyslexia in her current location, Singapore. But interestingly, there's no dyscalculia screening at the moment in the country. Again, I wonder why, as a curious reader. Here we have a glimpse into some case studies from the book. Again, I would like to invite you to pause the video and read on your own. This is the first case. You can even see the handwriting of this young boy. And this is the second case. What did you notice? As an educator, I found the conversation notes valuable as they echo with some of my classroom conversations with students. Certainly, I'm not trained in diagnosing dyscalculia, but the notes help me to spot students' need when further intervention is needed. It's also fascinating to see how complicated processing math can be for human brains. Okay, I'm getting to the end of my presentation. I want to share some future directions from reading this book. Now, I have a better idea of dyscalculia features and what challenges students might have in their academic, social, and emotional growth. I can then adjust my instruction and classroom management accordingly. For example, having clear steps toward completing a task can ease students' anxiety in building up necessary skills. Working with other educational professionals may help to see if holistic planning is needed, just in case if the students have multiple learning needs. Communicating with parents, of course, help them to understand how to work with their children at home. For the students, it is important that they understand it can be challenging to carry dyscalculia in their lifelong learning. But it is worth trying different coping mechanisms with a positive mindset. For me personally, I'm still in the journey of understanding neurodiversity better. Neuroscience, in my opinion, can transform the educational landscape much in the near future. when more educators are willing to get involved. Here are my references for this presentation. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the future. Bye-bye.